Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. European officials are scrambling to find out how to fight this new type of warfare, the drone warfare that supposedly just happened to appear on our borders, and it was not completely clear where exactly it was for the last couple of years, because everyone assumed that Russia will be fighting the war in Ukraine and it's going to be only Ukrainians that are going to be threatened. Well, surprise, surprise, we on this channel were right all along, and it turns out that Russia is threatening all of Europe and NATO as well, especially when it's being allowed to do so. So now everyone is trying to figure out what to do next. We also see Ukraine continue their strikes on the targets inside of Russia, now going into a second month of intense bombing campaign, which brings us increased success on the front line as Russians are reporting more and more issues with the gasoline. Russia has also lowered their interest rate, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to be a major impact on overall picture. These news and more in today's Ukraine Daily News Show. Let's begin. Absolute hilarity. I was laughing my pants off as I saw the articles and notifications that Europeans are suddenly finding interest into understanding what is the type of warfare Ukraine is fighting and how to fight it as well. So the ideas that Ukrainians have been going out and trying to tell everyone is like, this is the new type of warfare, that you're not ready, that you need to do more to be prepared for this modern type of warfare, that basically Russia is using tanks while you're still discussing what type of horses need to be bred, aka the Second World War scenario. The drones that came into Poland were not only showing how bad the situation is for interception of drones. As you remember, Poland intercepted only 4 confirmed drones out of 19, but also the fact that if Europeans will try to intercept these drones, they're using $400,000 worth missiles to intercept $10,000 worth of drones. And it's been 19 drones flying into Poland so far. What if it would be 100? What if it would be 200? Or as some of the latest attacks of Russia onto Ukraine, 800 or more drones flying into the territory of the European states. We would be pretty screwed. And this is specifically what I say the threat of Russia is. You can believe all day, every day that we in the NATO alliance will crush Russia at any time of the week. But it will definitely not go away unnoticed for us. We will see destruction in our cities. We will see issues within our systems as the Russian hackers attack. We will see Russia trying to dismantle and destroy our societies from within. It's not gonna come unnoticed. It will still cost us a lot more, even if we ultimately gonna defeat Russia and the axis of evil that they're building with China and everyone else. So NATO Operations Command in Europe has announced, with the words of General Alexander Grinkevich, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, that they will be deploying something that they call Eastern Sentry. It's supposed to be a shield where we Europeans and supposedly Americans as well are gonna learn about how to intercept and fight this Russian drone warfare. But I want to underscore that this needs to go deeper than just fighting the Russian drone warfare. There is a lot more layers than just terror drones flying into our territories. If there should be a lesson coming from Ukraine, is that we are not just one step behind, we are many steps behind in this type of warfare. And the correct answer, to be honest here, is not just European defense, because Putin is a dictator. Dictator will not stop until he is stopped. So the correct answer to this is what I have been saying, and now we see also the other politicians are saying. Foreign Minister of Poland, Sikorski Radoslav, is stating that we should be protecting the skies over Ukraine and shooting down drones in Ukraine. The German members of Bundestag, the chair of Defense Committee of German Parliament, Thomas Hoevekamp, stated that NATO should have shut down Russian drones over Ukraine, emphasizing that what should have been done day one. We should be closing the skies over Ukraine, not just because of Ukraine, and this would be actually humanized thing to do, that it would be the right thing to do to protect civilians, but it's our own interest. Even if you say, okay, there was different type of starting point, Russia flew planes, so we would need to shut down planes, it's not the case anymore. Now it is about us and our airspace and our buildings in our villages being blown up, thankfully without major casualties. But it is in our interest to respond to this with force, to close the skies over Ukraine, to protect us. And I'm really glad to see that politicians, even if they're talking about this in more private scenarios, as for example, this chair of German Defense Committee talked with the newspaper Spiegel about this idea, but at least the discussions are starting, and those are the discussions that we must have in Europe if we are to finally find out where our ball's at. And Russia is continuing their posturing, trying to intimidate us, trying to essentially state to Europe that you will get crushed by us, despite, again, whatever you believe. They've set up the Iskander ballistic missile launchers in Kaliningrad, aiming them close to the Polish border at Warsaw. And you might say, it's like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. It's good that Poland is responding to it and the allies are responding. We're sending more troops to the eastern border with the NATO countries. It's good that we are scrambling and we have US on our side. I would say, unless there would suddenly not be some kind of warming of relationship between United States and Belarus. Suddenly, at the training exercises between Belarus and Russia, in which they are imitating the attack on the NATO's countries, suddenly we are seeing American representatives just hanging out, chilling with the Belarusians and the Russians about these exercises, observing, as it's claimed here. But more importantly is not just this, how it's happening, that suddenly there are some observers. Observers are fine, you know, it's good to see what they're doing and report on this. This one we can understand. But this is happening while the United States is also talking and working with Belarus to remove sanctions and provide support and open windows of opportunities for that country. For example, US has removed sanctions from Belavia, which is a Belarusian air carrier. And you might say, it's like, well, what's the deal? You know, it's like there is some deal. The problem is that Belarus is basically a subject of Russia. So when you take off sanctions on the Belarusian air companies, what you are doing essentially is allowing the unrestricted access for components and spare parts for any planes within the Russian plane industry. It's simple to understand, it's simple to know, yet unfortunately this is where we are, and we as a NATO supposed allies within NATO I don't understand what is actually our defense plan here. How is strengthening and allowing our adversaries that are claiming and pointing missiles at us to allow them to buy and use components from our own production? How is this helping our defense exactly? Ukrainian strikes against the Russian oil facility is becoming an everyday occurrence and definitely systematic, so I will probably cut down a little bit on reporting just so I can focus on some other news. But in the latest couple of days, Ukraine has struck the largest oil port in Primorsk. They struck and ignited the oil and depots in Kadymiro and Smolensk region. Ukraine has also struck the Vtolova fuel facility again. They also struck the refinery in Ufa. They also struck at Russian oil refinery 1,400 kilometers away from Ukraine in Novoufa. Additionally, Ukrainian drones hit the main production part of the big refinery in St. Petersburg, engulfing it all in flames and showing amazing fireball pictures through the night. This is happening more and more. Russia is shutting down a lot of these gas stations. The shortage of gasoline is spreading and Russians are scrambling. There is a lot of right now discussions. It is yet to hit bigger cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, But more and more cities, especially on the occupied territories, are noticing the issue they're having with gasoline. They're actually having troubles fueling their military vehicles, and this puts a lot of strain on logistics in Russia. And that means only one thing and one thing only, that having advanced campaigns will become even more costly and problematic for Russia to execute. It's a fantastic thing that Ukraine is doing, and they're doing it systematically. So as I said, I will be cutting down on some of the reporting on this just because, we're repeating and talking about these strikes, and it's important to talk about this. But just for now, Ukraine is continuing this campaign. Whether I mention it or not, it is still going, and Russia is suffering from it greatly. India demands whopping $10 discount on Russian oil. It has been expected that previously Russia was selling oil to India at average price of $56 per barrel of oil. Now, with a $10 discount, this will essentially push it to under the limit set by the European Union of $47.50 per barrel. At $46, $47 per barrel, this will put even more pressure on the Russian economy and specifically on their budget deficit. And talking about the Russian economy and budget deficit, Russian central bank had an interest rate discussion, and they've cut the interest rate in Russia from 18 to 17, which upset everyone. So what you need to understand here is what is the internal conversation happening in Russia. It was expected that interest rate will be cut more aggressively, and the interest rate that everyone was hoping to see this year was 8% to 10% maximum. Everyone was hoping that the Russian central bank will start cutting like 2 and potentially get the interest rate all the way up to 10 or at least like maximum 12% by the end of the year. But the fact that they didn't start cutting the percentage points of interest rate by 2%, but instead by 1, was already saddening for a lot of companies inside of Russia that were hoping for a little bit better operations for them. What happened is that also this talk about the central bank's rates cut was also stated that there is actually not much more room left for Russian central bank to cut this interest rate because the situation in the Russian economy is not that great. They fully acknowledged that the only deflation that they saw over the last couple of months that was in Russia, that was putting that political pressure for central bank to cut the interest rate, it was seasonal change to some of the vegetables. That when you actually account for the real sector of economy in Russia, it is actually struggling. And now we see the government and Ministry of Finance of Russia looking at what is happening with their central bank, with their budget deficit. There was a question whether Russia will put in more new taxes or they will start printing money to fill in the hole that is left because there is no more money in the piggy bank to fill it in. And the answer is both. There is talks that Russia will be most definitely putting a little bit more money printing, a lot more money printing that will obviously expand the money base and raise inflation. But more than that, there is also talks that there is going to be a higher percentage tax rate. Right now, there are talks about the VAT increase in Russia from 20 to 22%, which would be a pretty significant increase for the taxes in Russia. We know VAT is definitely that one tax that's going to be prominent all throughout all of the industries. All in all, we're going to talk separately about the state of the Russian economy, but with the cut of the interest rate, it saddened a lot of the Russians. They're acknowledging the sorry state, and we're going to see the discussion about the budget for next year at the end of September, and oh boy, it's going to be a bloodbath. Right now, the news coming from Russia are not great. Everyone is expecting higher inflation to come back, and I'm pretty sure we will see Russian economy deteriorate further and further as the gasoline issues rise. And to finish on positive note, there has been tanks arriving from Croatia, the M-84 tanks. They were ordered as an exchange program where newer built tanks would arrive to Croatia from Germany, the Leopard tanks, and the M-84 tanks will be delivered to Ukraine. Well, the Leopard tanks have not been yet delivered to Croatia, but Croatia already sent the M-84 tanks to Ukraine. Thank you so much to people and government of Croatia. But more importantly, it is reported that these tanks and how they arrived, they're in a lot better state. Firstly, they're renovated, and secondly, they arrived with additional reactive armor, and they arrived with electronic warfare systems and anti-drone defense already installed. Thank you so much for watching this. As you can see, I moved away from the kitchen and found some other environment that I can film in. Guys, for the next couple of days, I will be filming a lot because I'm going to be in certain events. Unfortunately, I will be able to publish videos from these events only later. So there might be a couple of days where I will not be able to make videos because it might be going those events for a couple of days. But more videos will be coming after that with a lot of these inside footages and interviews that I will be making. So stay tuned for the channel. Many new good things and news to come. I love you. Slava Ukraini. Trust in Ukraine. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces. And I will see you next time.